cupping bowls have different sizes, and there's a formula on the SCA website, which when you get to that point of cupping, I'll send you the formula. But what you do is I've tared this bowl, and I would fill it up with water, and it would tell me it's somewhere at 180 milliliters or grams, because milliliters and grams can be interchanged. And then I think the formula is 1.86 or 1.36, and you divide that into it, and it gives you the ratio of beans that you put in your coffee. That's why there's 1 to 15 ratios, 1 to 13 ratios for brewing. And what basically that means is if the output of your coffee in a pour over is 350 milliliters, or milliliters can just be called grams, you divide that number by 15, and it'll tell you that it's 23.9 grams of coffee to produce a 350 gram or milliliter drink. Now, if you want it to be heavier, you go lighter. And what I mean by that is, and I'll show you and do the math. If you got 350 out and you divide it by 13, you get 26 grams, because it takes less coffee because of the dividing denominator. So the weight of the coffee is more. But let's say you want to do a 1 to 18 blend divided by 18, you'll notice that the amount of coffee goes down, because you're dividing that 18 into 350, and it only takes 19 parts, where you're dividing the 350 by 15 and it takes 23 or 24 parts. Does that make sense? So when you want to adjust your extraction level, you just take a coffee and you divide it by 350 by whatever ratio you want. Or let's just say you like your coffee at 26 grams. So you take 350 divided by 26, and it's a 1 to 13 ratio. Yeah.
You got all that?
She glazed.
I did. I glazed over. You saw it, didn't you?
She glazed.
She don't like numbers that much.
All right.
But
Well, did you get that iPhone
we
camera?
got it.
Yeah.
All right. So just
While we're doing that.
start 350 divided by 15, 1 to 15 ratio is 24 grams of coffee for a pour over. That produces a 12-ounce cup. This is a little different. So what I know is I've got this particular cupping bowl done, and now I'm going to the washed Ethiopian. I know that these bowls need 9.9 grams of coffee. So instead of filling up more bowls and tearing them out, I just know that this is what it takes. When you cup coffee, your goal is to try to eliminate a lot of the variables that are controllable. So you can control weight, you can control the water temperature, you can control the grind, but you might not control your palate. Like yesterday, I'd have said it'd been real hard to cup coffee because we were all real tired. You didn't sleep well, I didn't sleep well. And when we're fatigued, that does play a part in what our capacity to understand what's happening in the cup. Now I've got 3 bowls set up. This is my purge bowl. When I go to grind these coffees over here in this grinder, I don't want to cross-contaminate the natural processed coffee from the washed coffee, and I can't remember what I cupped last in this grinder. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these coffees, and I'm going to purge the system of whatever coffee that was in there and introduced my coffee, so that way it doesn't take any of the notes of the last coffee that come through the grind. Smell that. Grab you one and pick it up.
Okay. That's good.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it smells good.
It has berry notes in
It does.
Now do you see why? Hey, you're so cute. I know I am. I can't help it. No, don't be looking at her now. All eyes here, eyes forward. Oh. Hey,
I smelled it instantly.
So,
that blueberry note.
if this ever goes live anywhere,
We are live.
We'll
Are
talk
you live?
about we'll talk about her and what they did in the morning
Hey,
in my shop. It was like the. I ain't even gonna say
calm
it.
down, though.
It involves lidocaine.
It involves old people.
We're gonna
I
go over
never
here.
said that.
A little fun at Bald Guy Brew.
All right. The reason we took that coffee right out of this, right at the end of the first crack, is because I didn't want to lose that berry note.
Right.
Because what do we know about the S curve? If we go a little longer, we start to degrade the complexity of the organic acids that are developing, and we make it more singular of roasted coffee. That's what we talked about: whole wheat, rye, pumpernickel, sourdough. You cut them all up, put them in a toaster oven, burn it, and you have bread, but it's the toast flavor induced by the machine. We covered that this morning. Now, what's interesting here is the washed coffee doesn't have that particular note, because the natural process, and I'm purging to get that out of there, the natural process, because of all the sugars and the microorganisms that are actually on the skin of the coffee, are still working in the fermentation process to bring about that pretty crazy flavor profile. When we smell coffee in its ground state, it has a particular word that has to accompany it. It's called the fragrance of the coffee. The fragrance is the ground coffee terminology for that word. The aroma of coffee is when you put water on it and it releases a gas. And that affects your olfactory. Your olfactory is like, your olfactory bulb is connected to your brain, and there's little hairs that are in the top part of your mouth where there's a cavity, and these gases come up through the back of your mouth, and they are identifiers for flavors. Humans can do up to 3,000 different scents that makes them help to understand what's going on. When I was younger, I went to babysit Charlie and Jones' Aunt Elisa, and they were going to go to a football game, and Shannon couldn't come, so she gave me Aunt Elisa. First baby I ever held. I held her like this, and her eyes were still closed. Held her like this, and she was crying. Gave her back to her mama. She quit crying. She gave it back to me, and I held her like this. She still cried. Gave it back to her mama. She quit crying. She gave her back to me again. She said, well, Joan, I said, I can't hold this baby like this forever. She said, well, throw your hip out. Didn't know what that hips were for. So I threw my hip out, and I had the baby on my hip, still crying. So Joan's getting a little nervous now about leaving, takes the burp cloth, puts it on my shoulder, and then we puts the baby head on the burp cloth, and Annalisa, whose eyes are not open, smelled her mama. That's the power of the olfactory. So in cupping coffee, we're trying to eliminate the variables. We want to have the same grind, the same water temperature, the same amount in the bowls, because we're eliminating sloppy sides. We're eliminating the variables that we can control. We also want to cup either right before lunch, or if we're feeling strong, but if you got a head cold, can't smell anything, it doesn't work. We're going to do an experiment with jelly beans so that you can understand your olfactory. You ready?
Ready?
Well, I just have to say, I was born with no sense of smell. But when I turned 40, I started smelling a little bit. So I might not be very good at this.
Yeah, but I saw what you were good at this morning, so you all right.
You're so wrong.
I am all right. Yeah, I am. Bless her heart.